So if you go to visualization, then you can open the space interface as usual. So on my computer, because there are two screens, it doesn't appear directly. I have to drag the window that opened on the other screen, and that's it. We have the space interface, and then if you initialize, so the initialize button is the red one. Okay, so we'll only use the red buttons for the moment. You see that it already selects some initialization and control method. Actually, if you have a control method which is called step, it will select it directly. And if you have an initialization method which is called init, it will select it directly. Otherwise, it just select the first one. So first, we would like to go for homogeneous environment for this demo. And you have, as usual, you have the random seed, so you can fix your random seed, select your probes. And here you have a button which we will not use for the moment, and it is to enable stepping back. Because as you will see before, when you enable stepping back, then it records all the states from all the steps we are going to go through. So it does take a bit of time, of calculation time. So for the moment, we will not select it. So we just leave it blank like this, and we go for apply. The arrow there is the inspect tool. Is either the inspect tool or tools for you to change the view of the entity, but it will not change the state of the entity. It will not change its values or its attributes or something like this. So it's everything to inspect or eventually drag the attention of a user on a specific entity. So if you double click with a left click on any entity, then if there are several entities which on the place where you clicked, then it will ask you to choose which entity you want to inspect. So for example, I want to inspect the restraint forager, which is this the agent, the blue agent there. So and then I go for OK, and you have this entity inspector, which is a new inspector for Cormas, which is much more simplified inspector, and gives you an idea of the entity, and only shows the attributes which are relevant for Cormas user, because otherwise with the previous inspector, with the full inspector, I will say, then you have all the attributes of the object, even the one which are really I don't know, really used only for developers, or not necessarily necessarily used by users. So the entity inspector will give you, okay, so you see the different attributes. So here you must have the ID of this agent that we inspect, his energy and his plant, and sorry, and his patch. His patch is a plant. Okay. If I open another inspector on a cell, so on a plant, because the cells in a ESSEC model are called plants. So here you have another inspector which opens. In front of each lines, you have those symbols, and it opens different features. So when the attribute is a link to another object, then you have this kind of icon that shows, and if I click on it, then it opens another inspector on this entity, on the patch. Okay, on the patch. Here you have another icon, which is an histogram, an icon for an histogram. So if I click on it, what does it give you? It gives you an histogram of the energy attribute for all the plants. So here you have, I don't know how how many elements, but as many elements as the plants. So it's a 27 by 27 square grid. So, well, not sure how much plants it makes, but it makes 27 by 27. And here is the repetition, the histogram for the energy of those plants. If I go forward and I in time, then you see how it evolves. So here we have it for the plant energy, but because I've clicked on the plant energy, so if I can have it also on the energy of the foragers, and especially on the restrained foragers. Okay. So you see how the repartition of the energy among the population of restrained foragers. The classes are generated automatically. It's not exactly perfect, but it gives you an idea. It's sometimes not so easy to read the categories, but well, if you open it a bit more largely, then you have a guess. So what can you do with this histogram interface? You can go to options. Okay, refresh at each step. You can just say I don't want to refresh it at each step. So when you go forward in time, it will not refresh. You can change by occurrence or by percentage. So now it's by percentage. So you see 30% of the plants have a really low energy, and then in decrease, now we have 40% who have a very low energy. Decreases, etc. Or you can come back to occurrence. There is a menu, there is an option here which is change classes, which actually doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? It's you have several ways to access this histogram interface, either by this menu, by directly from the space interface and from the entity inspector. And in that case, this menu is not accessible. Is not you cannot access it. Sorry, but if you access it through here, through the probes, you can change the classes, and you can say, okay, I want the classes to be 1, 0 to 2, and then 2 to 10 or whatever. But this perhaps we'll see another time. So I close now this thing.
And the number of categories, you can modify it?
Yes, you can modify it, but when you accessed the histogram interface, not directly from the space interface. Yeah. On this space on this entity inspector, you have also options here. So if you right click on it, you have some different options. So if you are a bit bored because there are too many entity inspectors, you can say, okay, this one will be my only entity inspector. So now you see it's coché. It's coché. It's totally coché. How do you say coché, Anne?
It's ticked.
It's ticked. It's ticked. Okay. It's special for our English speakers. It's ticked. Okay, so now if you click on another, because we are all French here, so we speak English for the rest of the world. Okay, so now if you click on if you go for double click on any other entity, then the only thing it will do, it will update this interface which we selected, which we ticked to be the only entity inspector. Again, if I click on on a place where there are several entities, then it will ask me which one I want to inspect. The other options is what is sometimes you a bit you don't know which one you are inspecting, so you can ask it to be marked. So here it is marked, so it is this cell which I am inspecting, and you can go for the next one. So if you go to advanced, so it will go to the next one in terms of ID. Okay. in terms of ID. So we are on the 120 and 44. So if I go back, then 143. You can also say I want to go to the number, I don't know, 250, and now it's the number 250 which is selected.
Okay.
And you can say, okay, now I want to choose which class I want. So I go directly to a restraint forager, and now I'm inspecting the first restraint forager. So it must be marked here. Here it is marked. Okay, and then you go for the third, the fourth, etc. And what else can you do if you want them not to be marked by being selected with these strange dots or points which are on the entity? You can ask it to show it by a specific color. So I want the one that I'm inspecting to be shown as yellow, for example. So
Okay.
I'm not sure, where is it? It's still marked. Perhaps I didn't. Okay, up.
And can you select some entities with some specific characteristics?
Not with this menu, but yes, you can. This brings us to
Yeah.
the second tool, which is manipulate here. Perhaps just before to go to how to select several entities with a specific character or with specific characteristics, we can just look at what you can also do with the arrow. If you right click, then you have other options. Okay, if you right click on an entity, you have other options. So it can open you the chart. So here we are inspecting the chart of this entity. But this, I think we had it already before on the previous Cormas. So okay, this is the chart on one entity. You can ask for the info to be shown on the entity. So I remind you that info are written elements that you can show, that you can display on entities, and they are defined these text elements. They are defined through the point of view setter. So in Cormas, in ESSEC model, there are actually only one info that has been specified. The two others, they are default info items. So here is energy. So then it shows, okay, this one has 0. Okay, and this one, sorry, and this one, info energy, has 10. Okay, what else can you do? You can zoom, but that will zoom to one entity because I'm selecting this one, so it will only zoom to this entity. So it's not so interesting. You just zoom on one patch. Yeah. You can have the inspector that we had before, the full inspector. So you can, if you are used and you want to and you need to have the full inspector, you can get the full inspector with this right click. So here it is the standard object inspector of Visualworks. Okay, so you can reach all the attributes and all the methods of that object. There is another inspector. Okay, so I will do it on this. So on the restraint forager, visual inspector. So the visual inspector shows you the objects and eventually the relations between objects. So it's an object diagram. So you select an object. If you click on this little red dot here, it opens. It shows all the all the attributes of that object. If I go for patch here, up, it's a plant, and I can look at the plants. So it may be useful in some case, not sure. but it can show you, okay, these different elements. Okay, what else in this right click? You can go for POV, so you can change the POV of one entity. So before starting the session, I tested a bit, and I found that there was a bug when I want to change the POV of one cell. So I will not show it, but I've noted on my little book. So there are 2 bugs for the moment: the one that you said and this one. And I know that Pierre is working on several bugs at the moment as well. But okay, so I will show it on the restrained on an agent. So you can say, okay, for this agent, I want it to be shown with its class name POV. Okay, so its class name POV has been defined as being blue for restrained foragers and red for unrestrained foragers. And then, so it may, okay, the blue one is now at the bottom because the world is wrap in asset model. So when you are at the top, you can go to at the bottom directly. So it may be interesting if you want to focus your attention on one agent, and then you say, okay, I want to show that agent with this point of view, or eventually with that color. I think you can change the color or something like this. Yes, fill color. Or you want to say, okay, this one, I will change the line width of this agent, and then I can follow him. Well, I can follow him easily. If you are, whenever you want to reset those specific point of views, then you have to ask for all the entities to be refreshed with the point of view you are using. So here, this is classic in Cormas, and you go to POV, and then it was all the forages, and then you re-click on POV energy, which was the one selected, and then it goes back to the point of view which was used initially. So that's it for this right click, and you can change the fill color or the line color, and that's it. Another way to follow, because we were talking about following agents, is to track them. You can go to tools, or where is it? Or it's display, track foragers. Not sure if all of you used this tool. Perhaps you Bruno and Anne, you were already familiar with it. I'm not sure.
Oh, no.
No. Okay, so
Okay, cool.
you have lines which are very long lines. Why? Because the world is wrapped. So I'm not sure if the English word is wrapped, but I mean that the world is, and one agent from here can go in one
Okay,
step
maybe
to here.
you should remove the lines when.
Yes.
So maybe you should remove it when yeah.
Yes. Eventually, yes. So what will
can you do that just for one?
Yes, you can do for one, I think. Yes, normally for one. So I will reset it for us to be so perhaps exploring
Okay,
with
so you can visualize the trajectory, yeah?
Yes. So how to come back to?
You need to
yes.
unclick in track.
Yes, you can also yes, you can also unclick. Yes, you're right. So what I can do is display track. So if you click on forager is the superclass. So if I click on forager, it will apply for the 2 subclasses. Okay, and can I ask for one? Yes, one can be tracked. So of course patches cannot be tracked. If I right click, I'm right clicking. But if I go for unrestrained, then I can track this one. So this one is tracked now.
Thanks.
Okay.
So you see that it is tracked for, I don't know, 6 or 7 steps, and then and this you can set it by option.
Okay.
Here. Option, set track length. So you can
Okay.
track for only two steps, or two moves, not steps, two moves. Okay, so now here it's only for two, but it
Okay,
can
the
be
last two
also
moves, yeah.
infinite. So then you will track it forever. And so you see here, it's kind of I don't know, it's strange. It's because he went here and then he came back. So that's how sometimes you have strange lines that are at first not so. Ah, and he's dead. He died.
So no more tracked.
Yeah, no more tracks. Yeah. When you die, your tracks disappear as well. Yeah. Okay, so tracked, we saw that. So the info you can show them for all the entities. For example, okay, info energy, and then you have the energy of all the patches. Okay, and I think for the moment that's it for this tool, huh? For this arrow tool. I suggest we move to the hand tool, which is actually the hand represent manipulation. So manipulating the entities, we have added this option because, as you know, in Cormas platform, we want to have tools so that we can interact with so that people and users and eventually players, because sometimes we use it with role-playing games as a role-playing games, can interact directly with the simulation. So here it is to provide a user some tools for him to directly change the course of the simulation. So I have reached the stage where there is no more plan, so I will just reinitialize just to have a bit more green. That's it. So I reapply.
No more forms.
Still on my screen, it appears on the second screen, so I move it back. Okay, go. And now I'm on with my hand, with the hand tool selected. So when I left clicking now just selects. Okay, if you shift click, then it selects several. And now if I right click, I will ask for stuff to be done. So if I right click, so here there is plant with with a plant with a star, plant star, because there are several, so several plants. And then what can be done on these several plants? Then appears several actions which are actually methods which are defined at the level of the model, and which I can access directly here. So these are just methods of these plants. So I can ask all these plants to do logistic growth, which is the method we use for the cells, for the vegetation, for the energy to grow on these plants. Okay, so I did it once. It doesn't show much because the graduation of green is not that frank, is not that I don't know. So I will do it several times, and then slowly. Okay, so it's a bit more green. So okay, just to show that it works. If I select only one, be careful at one thing is that if you right click, if now I right click on another entity, it will still show me the menu of the selected entities. So it will so the menu refers to the entities which are selected. Okay, so even if I right click at the top here, it still shows me the menu of all the cells which are selected on the left part. So if I left click, then I go and I select only one, and then I see it's the plant 68. Okay, and go for step. Now if I left click an agent, the same appears a set of menus here, so I can ask him to reproduce. So he reproduced, he just executed his method to reproduce. I can ask him to move. Okay, I can ask him to move north, or to move northeast, I can ask him to move several times, move n times, and then it asks me how many times, so I ask him to go for 8 times. And perhaps he moved, but but he came back. I will track him. I will track him up. Now I go back to the
Okay,
hand
but
menu.
the current step is not modified, so the number.
Ah,
you are still in the same current step.
I'm on the same current step.
Yeah, of the simulation, yeah.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Sorry, yes. I'm still on step 5. Yeah, it doesn't change. So the idea is that
Okay.
you can, for example, use it. One way to use it is you go to a specific step, or you advance in your simulation, and then and then at this stage or at this step, you want to change the state of the world, and you want to do stuffs on your entities, and then
Okay.
after when you've done all these manipulations, then you go for the step number 6, for example. So here I go for 5 steps. So yes,
Can you drag and drop?
yes, you can drag and drop. So I take him, I with left click, okay, and I put him here. So you have to hold the left click. So you select him, you select several of them, for example, and you left click and you move them. When you have several agents that you are that you are moving, they will all move to the patch where is the arrow. No, where is the hand, the mouse. So they will not stay at these three places. They will all come to the one where I'm now releasing the button up. So now there are the 3 of them that are here. Okay, how can we know that?
Okay.
If I go, sorry, I went back to the arrow tool, and now I'm selecting them, and then I see that there are 3 forager 3, number 1 and number 7. I come back to the hand menu, the hand tool, sorry, and I can take this one, move it here, and this one, move it here. And if I'm a bit, if I'm confused and I'm not sure where they are, I can ask their ID to be shown or not. I can ask or not. Where is it? Okay, sorry. Display info forager ID. Okay.
ID, yeah.
ID, yes, that's it. Up. And it is the number 7. So you can move them, or you can move several of them. But when you, as I explained, if you move several of them, so cells, of course, you cannot move. Okay, you cannot move a cell. The patch stays. But if you move several of them, then they will all go to one cell, one destination cell.
In the same place.
Yes. What you can do after, if you want to go further within customizing the interactions you have with the entities, for example, you have configured your model, and you are using with someone with a person with whom you want to work with, interacting with this with the model, and you don't want all the methods to appear, okay, because there are all of them. So here, actually, die, eat, move, these and move n times and reproduce, these 4 methods, they are coded from the ESSEC model, and the one below, or even until updated energy, sorry. So the first methods in the list, they are within the ESSEC model, and the one below, they are coming from actually superclass of the agents of the restraint forager. So they are methods from the entity or the agent class. So upper class from restraint forager or forager class. But you can specify, okay, you can say, I don't want all these methods to appear. For this, you have to code a bit. You have to code a bit, because what you have to do is actually you have to redefine the method which is used to list the methods that appears on this menu. So we will go to the forager class here. So this is the code brother of Visualworks, which is used for Cormas, and it is in the so now we are on the forager class. Indeed, you have to code it at the level of the class. It is a class method. So here, not to instance, you have to go to class, and here in whatever protocol, you can put it in the manipulation protocol. The method is called methods for control. Methods for control. So I'm typing it. Okay. Methods for control. And then here you have to send. This method has to send an array, a list of the name of the methods that you want to appear in that menu. So in Smalltalk, to send it is a little hat like this, and to build an array, very simply, you can just use this syntax. Okay, so here it will send an array of all the elements which are here, and here you put the name of each of the methods you want to appear, that appear in that menu. So me, I want only reproduce and move, or eat perhaps. Reproduce and eat to appear, because that's what I would like to, that's how I would like to work with a person as a developer. I have developed this model to interact with a specific person who is interested by this model, and I want him to show me how he will move the agents by himself, or make them reproduce, or whatever. So I just write it and reproduce. So I put a little dash in front, because that's in Smalltalk, that's the way to specify that it is a symbol, that is an object of type symbol. So here, this will send me when this method is called, it will send an array made of two names, eat and reproduce. So I save, of course. It's Control S or right click and accept. You see that here there is a little hat, so my method appears, not a little hat, sorry, a little arrow, up arrow. It shows that above, in upper classes, this method is already defined. So the trick is to redefine this method. So indeed, this method is defined at the level of the entity. If you go to the hierarchy of the classes, you see that this forager class inherits from entity class. So by redefining it, I force the program to take my list, the list of that I have defined, and not the one that is defined by standard at the entity class level. So now if I right click, then I have my two, these two methods. I can do the same for, I can do, of course, the same for the plant class, or I could have eventually done differently for the restrained forager and the unrestrained forager class. That's the idea. Okay, so now he reproduced. So you always have to select the entity and then right click. Then I can show you also another thing is to answer your question, Serge, from 20 minutes ago, is how to select a set of entities.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's right. So you have tools here, and you have manipulate instances. And this opens an interface which sticks to the window here on the left. Until now, we have manipulated the entities by just clicking on them. Okay, you can also use this interface to directly manipulate a set of entities. So we are still on step number 5, and we didn't change. Of course, I can go forward as before. So now it goes on with I have forced, or I have, as a user directly, I have asked for 2 entities to reproduce, so they have reproduced, and they are in the simulation, in the current step of the simulation. So if I'm going to step number 7 or 8, and it's still there. It goes with the new state of the simulation that I've created. So using this menu here, you can manipulate a set of entities. So for example, all the foragers, I want them to eat. So you see that I have specified that the only two methods that will appear are eat and reproduce, and also in this menu it is the same, eat and reproduce. So I want all of them to eat. I want all the plants to step. Okay, so step it in the step method of the plants, it is to grow, so that's why they go darker green. I want specific plants, or let's see, I don't know, I want so let's see how much energy they have. They have here 2 to 3. Okay, all the plants that have, I don't know, let's say, okay, let's more than 4 energy to grow. So we have to apply to a subset of instances. So I select all the instances that have more than 4 of energy. So they are 343 plants that are in that case, amongst among 729. And then all of them now, if I select, it is only those that grow, and they are eventually and they are even they are selected, so I can see which one they are. Okay, if I want to remove this selection, then I go for reset. I can, what can I do? I can, so what I want to do, select these ones and select the one that are less than 0.5. Select. Perhaps it doesn't work as, no, I clicked on select and not on add, sorry. Okay, let's try grow. Okay, you can also change the value on the, so I reset the selection. You can change the value. I want all of them to have the value of 1. Do you want to paint or apply to all of plants? Apply to all. Okay. That's it. And you can change the color, but that's a bit the same as if I inspect, then I have all the collection of all the cells that I'm selecting. You can change the color, but that just change the color. It doesn't change the value or the attribute or the state of that entity. So now it's all green. So perhaps I'm going to reinitialize. Reinitialize. Okay, I'm going forward. Yes, I can close. I can close. So that's what you can do with this manipulate instances interface.
Can you select by ID number?
Oh, sure, why not? But you can have it here, and then you can say, okay, all the ones that have an ID of more than 5. Select. I'm selecting. No, I'm on foragers. Sorry, I thought I was on plants. So there are no, the foragers, their ID are until 10 or 12, it seems. So all the ones that have an ID, okay, so that's it. The last stuff we didn't look at was this cross, which is actually a plus, and this is to create agents or to add agents. So when I click on that, another interface appears, and which is create instances on view number 1, because for the moment there is only one view. So here you have 3 ways to create instances. So you define the type of instances you want. Okay, so these are restrained or unrestrained. There are only two instances. For edges, there are not instances because forager is defined as an abstract class, and an abstract class cannot be cannot have instances. So there are only two entities for which you can create new ones, new instances, which are unrestrained and restrained. The last class in this model is plant, but plant, they are cells, and you cannot in Cormas, you cannot add cells during the simulation. You have three ways. Here, what is ticked, it is manually, so it will be manually created. So now, if I go to create, then I manually create, so I have to select manually where they are located. So I put one here, and one here, and one here, and one here. And then when I'm done, I click stop. Eventually, if you want your user, because you are within a kind of interactive simulation with a person, you want to allow them to create 5 restraint forager per step, for example, or you allow them to do that. So you say, okay, 5, create, and then they have only 4 now, and they can do only 3, and 2, and 1, and then finished. If I continue to click, nothing happens. So that's one way. Another way is to say, okay, I want them to be located randomly. So I want to create 20 of them, and they will be randomly located. So okay, they appear randomly anywhere. Or eventually constrained. So they are randomly located, but with a specific constraint. So here can say, okay, I want them to be on patch which have an energy less than 5. Okay, that's it. Or you can have 2 criteria, or you can ask, so I want I don't know, 4 to be created on empty patches. Okay. So if I go back to, so that's it for this menu here, well, for this tool. There is nothing much more you can do with creating agents. Still, yes, there is one thing which you can ask for the new instances that are created to be also to execute also an initialization method. So here I create 4, and they have to execute their initialization method, which is init energy an argument, but there is no argument for me. What is the value of the argument? But so init energy, so I want them to be created with 10 of energy. So they have been created with the 4 of them randomly located with 10 of energy. If I go to, and that's it for this tool, and that's it for this arrow or plus tool. So you can also access it. So I think if I go to end, it will close it. So it appears when I go to cross here. I change the tool I'm working on. It disappears. You can also open it with the menu tools, create instances. And the first time when it first opens, the small icon does not appear. Not sure why, but like this. But then if you change, and then see if I open it, then there is no icon here. But then if I go back, and then I come back. And what else appears here? The number of entities which are actually in the simulation. Okay. So the last tool is the zoom tool, okay, which we have used to inspect only one, or to zoom on only one entity, which was not so useful. But then, so this is a classic way to use the mouse, and you just hold the left button, and then when you release, it opens a second view on the simulation. And if I go forward, the two of course are updated, and you can have a different point of view for this one. So for example, in this version of ESSEC, there is another point of view, which is the veg class, which also just shows a different green depending on the value of the cell, of the energy of the cell. So it's just an example, huh? But the point of view is a bit different here. I'm not sure which one I'm inspecting, so I will, okay, for example, this one, okay, touch. So now this is a view only on the top left corner, and I have to, if I want to have a different point of view, when I open a new, when I zoom, it takes the point of view of the mother window of the main window I've been using zoom on. So then I changed so you see okay, the point of view is different here. And then of course I can ask for this specific window not to show the foragers. I don't know why I would like to do that, but I could eventually ask that, or to show the foragers with a different point of view, which is the class name. Okay.
And you can zoom on the zoom window.
You can zoom on the zoom. I want really to look at this guy. And, oh, I can see his nose. Ah, yes, there, his nose is there.
Powerful.
So powerful. That's it.